Welcome to episode 279 of Sports Geek. On this week's episode, I geek out with Microsoft's Mike Downey.
Welcome to Sports Geek, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who is applying Moneyball to esports, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, my name is Sean Callanan, and we are going to be talking a little bit about Moneyball, a little bit, in this episode with Mike Downey. But before we do, my name is Sean Callanan. Thank you very much for listening. I'm very appreciative for you taking the time to download and listen. You can find this podcast on all good podcasting platforms, and if you would like to, you can give it a review on platforms such as iTunes or Apple Podcasts, as it's now known. If you want to get in touch with me, you can do so by numerous methods. Via the Twitter, at Sean Callanan, Sean Callanan on LinkedIn, or at SportsGeek on most channels, or you can check me out on Instagram, where I'm sharing a photo from a live sports event until sports returns. I miss sports. I don't know about you, but I miss sports. It's good that sports will be coming back very soon. And also, if you want, you can send me an email, sean@sportsgeekhq.com. Before I get stuck into this episode with Mike Downey from Microsoft, just a quick promotion for our Sports Biz Zoom calls. I'm really loving these calls every week. Doing it twice a week. You can RSVP by going to sportsgeekhq.com/Zoom calls. There is a link there on the Sports Geek home site. Homepage. Last week we spoke about mobile and how mobile may adapt, was adapting before COVID, and how it might play a part in the fan experience both in the home and in the stadium. So it was good discussion with people who have built apps for their teams or for their leagues, or people who worked on the fringes and developed them in with vendors. So please join in. You don't have to be a subject matter expert to join in. You can come in and learn, or you can throw your questions in from your area of expertise. This week, the topic in our Sports Biz Zoom calls is grassroots and participation. So it's going to be very interesting to see how sports return onto the pitch, onto the court, onto the field, into the pool, all the different fields of play in grassroots. So please RSVP, invite someone if you're involved in the grassroots side of things, if you run your own club. And also check out grassrootspledge.com.au. It's a social enterprise project that we've kicked off with the guys at Intex to help grassroots sports, both rally their fans and participants to get behind their sport, but also sort of help them provide a bit of revenue in the meantime. And so people can pledge that they will be back. Couple of upcoming sessions in the Zoom calls. We're going to be looking at digital June 2-3, and we're also going to go back to the data CRM topic on June 9-10. So yeah, please sign up. Running them Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is around lunchtime in Europe and Africa, and then 10 o'clock Wednesdays Australian Eastern Standard Time, which works out to be 5 p.m. on the west coast of the US, and about I think 8 p.m. in the east coast. If you want to spend your evenings talking a little bit of sports biz, please do so by going to sportsgeekhq.com/Zoom calls. Also, really do appreciate everyone who has supported the Patreon. You can support the Patreon campaign by going to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. You can do so like David Huxtable did. Thank you very much, David. I really do appreciate it. You can support it personally like David did, or you can support as a startup or a sports tech or a digital business. Check it out, please. sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. And now, here's my chat with Mike Downey. He's from Microsoft. We dive deep into sports and tech, and we really get our geek on. It really triggered this via the recent announcement with the NBA, with Microsoft being named the official artificial intelligence partner and official cloud and laptop partner for the NBA. So this is my chat with Mike Downey from Microsoft. Very happy to welcome Mike Downey, the Principal Architect of Sports Technology at Microsoft. Welcome to the podcast, Mike.
Hey, Sean. It's great to be here. I'm a fan.
So, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, I'm full disclosure, sports geek. I was a geek before I was a sports geek, so I'm doing my background question before your background question. But I was a certified Microsoft developer back in the day, so very familiar with the Microsoft stack and everything that it is and how it's evolved. But how did you find your way into the world of sports?
Yeah, also a geek first. I mean, I've been a sports fan my whole life since I was a little kid. But when I've been at Microsoft for 11 years now, and I've been focused in the media and entertainment space since I joined the company.
Yep.
And back when we announced the Xbox One, which is a while ago now, at the same time we announced our first partnership with the NFL. And at the time, I was managing our relationship with Disney and ESPN. And as the guy who worked with ESPN, I was the closest to being the sports guy at the time.
Yep.
And so when the NFL deal got all of the other sports leagues really excited to come talk to us as well. So that's when my higher up said, "Hey, can you just go focus on the sports stuff for a while and see where that goes?" And I've been doing that for I think last 7 or 8 years now. So I ended up with one of the best jobs in the company just because I happened to be the ESPN guy at the right time.
Yeah, so you're the sports geek inside Microsoft, really.
One of them. There's a bunch.
There is a bunch. There is a bunch.
Yeah.
So it has been like I said, I was a .NET developer for many years before I started Sports Geek. But like the whole sport technology space has really grown and evolved, especially your time in how it's expanded from both from the tech that's being rolled out in stadiums and that kind of thing. So Microsoft's got a lot of pieces of the puzzle. Where are some of the where did the relationship start, and how has it evolved over that time?
Yeah, well, you're right. Like the sports tech landscape, and you know this better than most people, has really grown by leaps and bounds just in the last few years. I think a lot of it has to do with data. So for starters, like when we look at sports projects, partnerships, we usually look at opportunities in tech that fall into either a fan engagement category, a team and player competition category, like helping teams win and players get faster. And then the third would be like a logistics and operations type of story. But in that team and player performance area, which has really been where most of the attention's been, I think a big driver there, and see if you agree, has been access to data and sensors for collecting data, and the kind of democratization, or the ability for off-the-shelf solutions for collecting data. It's really like just in the last few years, it's been commoditized, right?
Yep.
So back in the day, like all the sports tech startups were just trying to figure out how do we get a sensor small enough to collect the right amount of data. That's done now. That's been commoditized, and so we've seen this progression from data collection to then, all right, now we have too much data. Now we have to figure it out. Like, what does it mean?
Yeah.
So you have all these sports analysts and data scientists trying to understand what it means.
All the panels we heard on big data, right?
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
like, we've got all this data. What do we do with it?
What do we do with it?
Yeah.
So you had that, like, so we shifted into that mode. Like, let's build solutions around what do you do with it. And then I think today the most exciting tech stuff that we're really looking at is the next level, which is harder to do, more expensive to do, and there's less talent with the right skills to do it. But that's the AI and machine learning predictive analytics space, which a lot of that comes down to how do we make better decisions using all the data that we have. And so we spend a lot of our time in that category. It still spans the whole spectrum, but that's really, I think, where the hottest focus is right now.
Yeah, I mean, early on, a lot of the data stuff was, in the Moneyball space, popularized by Billy Beane, but for some people it might have been popularized by Brad Pitt, right? But it's, it's the analysis of all the stats and how can we be better high performance. So it was a lot of the coaching and analytics, and I talked to a lot of my friends in MLB, and that's where all the tech and all the geeks are. They're all analyzing baseball, a lot of stuff,
sure.
and they don't tell anybody. They don't share anything because it's all competitive advantage. And I love those discussions. They never end up on the podcast. And shout out to the MLB folk. They know who they are. So there's that Moneyball side, but then we've also seen the other Moneyball, which is the business of sports around ticketing and analyzing fan data
business
and lifetime, the business intelligence piece that is just absolutely growing as more teams are trying to get as much revenue out of all of their business as possible, they really put a big focus on that. And then like the other piece, and this is where I was interested in the AI and the fan personalization, is the fan-facing stuff. Like, it's great to have all these stats and bits and pieces and snippets. It's like, how can we commercialize it, or how can we get that in the hands of the fans? That's been something that a lot of teams have been trying to grapple with, to go, this is useful. We don't want to give it away because it's competitive, but how do we give away some content that is engaging to our fans? How are you sort of playing in that fan storytelling space?
Yeah, and that is an ongoing challenge. In fact, in sports tech, the most interesting stories are often those ones that are around performance. And like you said, those are the ones the teams hold closest to their chest, because it's a competitive advantage. And so in some cases, there's opportunities, like now that there's so much data that you see at the league level, not at the team level, but the league level, they're taking these large data sets that they now have and they're exposing that out to the public. Or they're just saying, look, every team has access to the same stats, the same data, so we don't have to hide this. We can put this out there. And then you see opportunities for tech companies or enthusiasts or, entertainment companies to take that and do something that fans can consume that increase the enjoyment of the sport. And I think one of the best examples of that, if you look at stats and data and things like that, is one of the things that makes sports interesting is the drama around the moment, right?
Yep.
Like it's that tension that builds one team versus another in the competition. And at the pro level, often you're seeing the best of the best players, right? So if you take like golf as an example, you have a large field of 140 plus golfers, but what makes the TV broadcast is only the top 10 or 15 of the top 140 best in the world. So you're only seeing the best of the best of the best. The problem that causes is, as a fan, you may not realize how difficult it is for each one of those shots that they execute, because you're only seeing the best of the best all the time. And so the opportunity that presents is a scenario where you can use stats and data analytics to provide more context around what's special and unique about what's happening. So I think that's where we're seeing more use of this technology that's fan-facing, is saying like, yes, that three-pointer that Steph Curry just hit, yeah, he does that all the time. He's done it more than most NBA players in history, right?
Yep.
Definitely at a faster pace. But when you wrap context around it, like the moment that he was in, the situation the team was in, who's defending him, like all of those different variables, when you start providing some context around that, as a fan, you go, oh, okay, well, that actually, Tiger Woods draining a 35-foot putt in that situation is now way more interesting because of the context that the data provided around it. So from an AI perspective, like most of what I just mentioned historically has been done by humans.
Yep.
The networks, they hire people who are just an encyclopedia of every stat and anecdote you can think of, and that doesn't scale very well. So what like us and others have tried to do is how do you automate some of that, at least the mining of that data, right? Like, so how can you use AI and algorithms to say, all right, given this very specific scenario and an understanding of the data, pull out some of those anecdotes that are now interesting, potentially interesting, and then like what work we've done in the past, we wrap an engine around that allows humans to tune it so that it outputs better quality content as the system progresses. So I think that's some of the fan-facing stuff that you're seeing where this technology is coming together, and that's exciting. And there's lots of room to grow there. But that's, as a fan, that's more exciting to me, because when you add that context to the moment, then like even as a casual fan, that just gets way more exciting.
But the thing is, the casual fan is far more sophisticated than they were 10 years ago. So the advanced stuff that's happening, in baseball and in basketball and all the different sports are all looking for their Moneyball edge. And then that's starting to bleed out, and people are reporting it. We're seeing, journalists leverage that. We're seeing guys like Zach Lowe in the NBA that, he writes about the NBA, but he's bringing in the advanced metrics. So it's becoming more common. No one was talking about effective field goal percentage when Michael Jordan was shooting, but now that's what we're looking at and saying it's a better metric. And so it starts, and then it bleeds into the broadcast because we want to have that context. So I think that's the mystery of AI to a lot of people, to like non-geeks. It's like, what do? We just chuck this all in a box and this magical machine is coming magically coming back with these things. There is a lot, there is a bunch of geeks and coaches and analysts that are diving in. And then once the system starts knowing that, it can then, you're training it to present some of those things that come back and go, pace of game and our shots actually are related. That's something that you can get out of like big data and like working inside the system.
Yeah, I think you have to be careful when you're doing work in sports as a tech partner like we are, of not getting too into the weeds on the technology like you alluded to a minute ago. And I think to the fan, you want to present new content to them that makes their enjoyment of the sport better, right? You want to enhance that. And then our goal is for the average fan, not the tech influencer or the business decision maker. But if it's just a consumer audience, we just like them to go, wow, like that was a really, interesting anecdote or cool feature or great graphic. Yep. And it sounds like there was a lot of intelligence behind that. And that's powered by the Microsoft Cloud or Microsoft AI. Awesome. That's great. Yep. Like really great magical stuff happened. And now I get this great information that wasn't there before. And then obviously, the layer deeper is that business decision maker and those, the CIOs and the IT, all those audiences. That's when we want to go a layer deeper into what we're actually doing. And our goal there is really to say, this is really advanced stuff. We're building tool sets and services and capabilities that make the complexity a lot easier for you to use so that you can do these types of things too, without having to hire one of those very few, very expensive data scientists that are the highest in demand, title in the business. Like, that's hard to get. So how can we take some of what they're capable of doing and put it into software so that more can use it?
So one of the questions I do get a lot of people trying to, I guess, break into the world of sports, and they love sports, they want to be it in some capacity. And one of the places I've been sending them is, the sports world needs more geeks, needs more people to be able to analyze this data. This is where the growing need is. Like you just said, there's a demand for this, and being able to better analyze your fan data to get them into the stadium to sell more tickets. What should upcoming students and people want to break in the industry, what should they be looking at to train to get better skilled to be able to fill these types of roles?
Yeah, so there are lots of opportunities. From my observation, I think the largest volume of opportunity and where there's a major shortage of skills is in that generally data science category. The machine learning stuff is very, very high in demand in all industries, not just sports. Yeah. Super high in demand. I mean, data science in general is. But I think if you're trying to get into the business, demonstrating skills and knowledge of great tools like Python, if you're looking to learn a language, like you can do pretty much anything with Python. There's great frameworks and tool sets out there. Demonstrate mastery of a very specific workflow or framework. That's the kind of thing that can really help. Even just the great thing about sports that they're not necessarily equivalents in a lot of the other big industries, but in sports, there's so much data that's already out there for you to work with. Yep. Just as someone who wants to break in, like it's easy to get your hands on data. So if I were a student and I was thinking like I want to be the lead data scientist for the Sacramento Kings or the LA Lakers or whoever, you can go out there, you can find data, and you can pick up the tools. Like it's almost all free. I mean, in most cases, all of the tools, like when I was young, this stuff wasn't free, right? Like when I was a student, but nowadays it's fantastic. You can take that data and you can just do your own analysis, go through tutorials, learn the stuff. There's lots of stuff out there that's even specific to sports, but try to find your own insights, play with it. One, it's fun. If you're a sports fan, you're going to geek out over all this stuff anyways. Join a fantasy football team or a fantasy basketball team or something like that, because then you have an even greater incentive to dive into the data and the stats, right? But then start playing with it yourself. And really, as when you're hiring for tech nowadays, like the school and education, I think it depends. But for me, it's less important. I just want to see your work. Like, just show me the work that you've done. I can see the passion. I can see how creative your mind is just by you taking me through the work that you do. And that's my best advice, is to just go play with it. And being sports, like, there's so much great data out there.
Yeah.
It's not hard to find.
I mean, it's very similar to when you see sports creatives and people working into the creative space, and they'll redesign NBA logos as Premier League logos, and they go and it's like, oh, cool, I can see your flair and what you've done. Like the same thing, we've seen a few different couple of places like the MCG down here did a data hackathon where, again, they opened up some of their data sets. And I think once you start getting that data, you don't realize that, we can help make concessions move quicker or decide, what should be on the menu. Like, there's so many scenarios that sports overall is under-resourced for the amount of data and problems that they have. If someone was to present, this is a way, or this is a segment, we love finding, these audiences of opportunity. Do you realize you haven't spoken to these people? Just presenting that to go, yes, it puts you above other people that are there.
And I'll add one other thing, that just because I do a lot of interviews and hiring for jobs at Microsoft too. For me, one of the things that stands out most in a candidate, especially if it's a young candidate for a more entry level or junior level position, is seeing the passion in that candidate for that job, for that field they want to get into, and seeing how that passion translates to their experience and the work that they do. But that really makes you stand out. And in sports, that's a perfect opportunity. But if you can be like, all right, I'm interviewing with Sacramento Kings. So in preparation for that, I grabbed a bunch of, basketball data, and I did my own analysis for you. And let me show you and share with you how I did that. Because as if I'm hiring people for my team, I want those passionate people who love this subject matter, because I know they're going to go the extra mile to get creative and figure it out. And so that's who I look for, and that's what I would recommend anyone who wants to pursue that path.
The other thing I want to sort of touch on, which is sort of in that fan-facing space, is you talked a little bit about the Internet of Things and sensors and stadium tech. Given the current environment of social distancing and those kind of things, how important is the development and those types of things going to be in the stadium tech and making sure everyone's safe?
Yeah, so there's two pieces of that. There's the in-stadium experience, obviously, is going to be a big challenge. And to be quite honest, we've had a lot of conversations around stadium tech over the years. It's a very, very popular topic. Security is usually the biggest consideration. How do you get a lot of people in one space, in and out of it, and all of that? That's been huge. Understanding where people are in a stadium, and even just like optimizing your concession sales and merchandise sales and things like that, and just having intelligence around the flow of the stadium. Looking at we've been doing a lot of work with the Miami Heat. They're doing some really fascinating business intelligence work around optimizing ticket sales and in very real time, knowing what seats are available and being able to very quickly act on that and make them available and push offers out to fans, and all of those types of things. That's where a lot of the work gets done, on just understanding what's happening inside of the stadium. But the reference to our current state of affairs in the world, and all of us, probably watching sports from home for a while, the in-stadium experience is probably going to be on hold for a while. That's been a popular topic recently too. And I think that actually connects nicely to a lot of the work that we're doing with our recently announced partnership with the NBA, which is a big deal. It's a big multi-year deal for us. But we're excited about that because the core focus and emphasis in that deal is, how can we make the what in the business we call the direct to consumer experience, but it's really that as a fan, how do I watch games over the internet, over the top, on my devices, my smart TV, what have you? How can we make that a more personalized experience? And that's not just marketing rhetoric, but it's literally like in most sports cases today, when you sign up for a digital pass to watch that sport or authenticate through your TV provider, you pretty much get the same experience that everybody else gets.
Yeah,
like
it's
in
very
some
much
cases,
mainstream broadcasts.
Mainstream,
right?
It's recreating the old school TV broadcast. You just get to watch that rectangle on your device now. So we're trying to, and this has been a pet interest of mine as a technologist for years. Like, there's got to be a better way to take advantage of that technology and the interaction models. And so we think that a lot of that comes down to personalizing the experience. And that's beyond just things like, hey, tell me who your favorite player is, and we'll make sure you see more of that player's clips. Like, that's the low-hanging fruit. This is more around using intelligence behind that and saying, tell us who your favorites are. But even as you watch different clips, we can automate the process of saying, like, okay, this fan is watching a lot of Steph Curry, Klay Thompson clips, a lot of shooting clips. It's shooting. Hey, maybe there's a G League up and coming player, a rookie, who is on a similar pace that Steph Curry was on when he entered the league, and he's a great shooter. Maybe this fan will like that piece of content because clearly they've shown an affinity for a certain style of play. So you can start being more intelligent around, like, understand what the fan is interested in and present more content to them. And, at the end of the day, like an overused term, but it works, is more signal and less noise. Like the entertainment atmosphere, even within sports, can be a lot of noise. There may be
teams, you got to break through the clutter.
I just don't care about certain content. And as we know, especially, the younger you go with audiences, the attention span gets shorter and shorter because people are just presented with more digital content than ever before. And so getting more signal behind that, the small amount of time you have, and that can happen through how fans share clips with their own friends. Like I'll trust a clip that my buddy sends me, and I'm more likely to watch that. And so how can we facilitate that? How can we make that work better, be cleaner, less steps for people to go through? But those are the things that we think about in creating kind of a more personal fan experience.
Which is just following the leads of all of our other content consumption, right? So, you watch, Netflix knows the types of shows you're watching, and so that's what it's recommending. So it makes sense that sports goes down that path. It doesn't need to just say...
it hasn't yet.
Exactly. Because at the moment, it's like, what are your favorite teams, Sean? It's, I'll still follow the Pistons. I don't care that they suck. But I do want to watch the Warriors when they're on. And you're right. I want to make sure I catch every Steph Curry when he's going bananas. And if it's like, if I get an alert and I always click it, then we've got to make sure, or can we predict when Steph Curry's about to go off? So it's like, he seems to be heating up. Yeah. He seems to be hitting, not just red zone type of thing, he seems to be heating up right now. You really should tune in because you don't have to rewind and catch it. Like that kind of thing, which then should shape what future content might be, whether it's like the highlight clips or the magazine style shows or the interviews, that you get a richer data set of, it makes sense for us to do more of this content.
Yeah, not only should the system get smarter about what content it presents to you, but that system, as you said, can help the league, in this case the NBA, get smarter about what content they create and they put out there, right? Yep. So all of this feeds into better content over time. Yeah.
And you end up with, which what we're all looking at now, one of the key metrics is like a deeper engagement, not just looking at the views. It's like, I am leaning in, or I am also always clicking on that push notification to dive in.
We even think, to interrupt, but we even think that things like notifications and how do you figure out the best time to grab the attention of the fan, even if there's not a live game going on? And are there opportunities to even catch that fan up on what they've missed so far? Like as a really casual fan, I've been busy and I haven't been paying attention to my team for the last 2 weeks. But if you can present me with something that lets me get all caught up on things, so now I'm more inclined to want to watch the next live game. I don't feel out of the loop. That's an opportunity that I haven't seen happen in sports yet either.
Yeah. And I think, one of the discussions we've been having on several Zoom calls with different sports executives is, like, at the moment, again, in the current situation, we're looking at all the fans not being in the stands, and how do we engage them at home, which is a critical thing. But it was a critical thing before COVID kicked in. Like 99% of the fans aren't at the game. And so it's just put more emphasis on those fans at home, and how do we draw them in? How do we make sure that they feel like part of this virtual stadium? I feel like, the next 18 months to 2 years, there'll be such a focus on keeping those fans inside this virtual stadium. It'll be so important for sports going forward.
We're more sensitive to it now, and the bar's been raised because we're all living in this environment now.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you very much, Mike, for the time. I want to finish with Sports Geek Closing 5. You said you're a sports fan. Do you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
I do. When I was a little kid, my mother was a police officer, and she would, on occasion, would work part-time at the Sacramento Kings basketball games.
Okay.
And so when I was very young, I got to go to my first live sports event. It was a Kings game, and I remember she got to take me kind of backstage, in the back, and I got to get pretty close to a young Michael Jordan at the time, and that's my first memory of going to a sports event.
That's a pretty when you can connect. So that would have been in the 90s, late 80s, and on the Sacramento Kings, who would have been on the
Reggie Theus was the star back then.
Oh, Reggie Theus, that is pushing back,
way back, yeah.
So that's before Mitch Richmond's time at Sacramento.
Before Mitch Richmond, he was like early 90s, I think, early mid-90s,
yeah. Oh, terrific. You would have been a few sports events in your time at Microsoft. Do you have a favourite food, or a go-to food, or a favourite food memory at a sports event? Because, if we talk about sports technology is advanced, I tell you what, food at stadiums has advanced over the last 10 years. It seems to be getting crazier and crazier. Is there a crazy dish, or do you just have a go-to food when you're at a sports event?
The one that sticks out for me is, and I love the basics, but the one that sticks out for me is the garlic fries. Now, I'm a Northern California guy, and I remember when the Giants opened AT&T Park in San Francisco, the famous garlic fries were like the talk of all of sports, and that's still to this day, 49ers, Giants fan, I always go straight for those.
Yeah, they probably should be a staple. They will enforce social distancing after 1.5 meters, so maybe that's what you should be eating. What's the first app you open in the morning?
That's probably my Outlook. It's my calendar. The first thing I do is figure out because I'm on conference calls all day. So that's the first thing I look at.
Very good. Very good. Is there someone that you follow that you suggest the podcast listeners should follow, whether it might be someone on the internet or an author or someone that their work you follow?
I would say one of my favorites that I think a lot of people don't know about is Brian Baldinger, Baldy's Breakdowns, NFL on Twitter. So I forget what his handle is. I think it's Baldy something.
I'll put it in the show notes.
Post it up. But he does these short. He holds his smartphone up to his screen as he watches game film, and he slows it down frame by frame, and he explains what's happening, but he picks more obscure things that the broadcast doesn't pick up, and it's fascinating because he's a former player, and just hearing him break it down, I think is amazing.
And then the sports geek in me just goes, how can we put that kind of tool in his hands so he's not doing it with the smartphone, and he's just hitting the clip and he's talking about it and he's sharing it, and I think that's one of the conversations we've had over the years is how much the NBA specifically has allowed fans to share their content, and it has helped accelerate their growth globally. That's something you can go to the NBA and go, hey, we should be able to do this. I want to do my commentary or do my take, because you've got so many of these analyst coaches, online now that want to give their version of what they're watching.
Agreed.
And lastly, what social media platform in the style of Kevin Durant, you only get to pick one? What social media platform is your MVP? How do you stay connected with the scene?
I hate to do this, but I'm going to go for the Microsoft answer and say LinkedIn. I get a ton of value out of LinkedIn, increasingly so now that it's shifted to have more of a timeline approach and live streams and things like that. So That's, it's a Microsoft company,
It's
but
not
I love it.
It wasn't fishing for a company recommendation, but I'm a massive fan of LinkedIn. We've been connected for many years on LinkedIn, and one of the commentary has been like since the acquisition of Microsoft and the content focus and the connecting, the experience has improved. And so you're getting lots of content that is useful to you. Again, back to our point of the algorithm, like you're clicking on stuff that's sports tech and fan facing and about crowds. You get to see more of it. So it has, I'll give the same ringing endorsement because I've had a lot of people and guests comment the same thing. So I'm assuming that is the best place. How can people connect with you on the internets?
Yeah, LinkedIn's great. And on Twitter, it's at MDOWNEY, at MDowney.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. I look forward to potentially maybe attending a game with you in the maybe near future, but it might be a little bit further in the future. But thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
That'd be great, Sean. Thank you.
We'd love your support on our Patreon campaign. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon.
Thanks again to Mike Downey from Microsoft. If you want to geek out with him, as we mentioned there, M Downey, DOWNEY is his handle on Twitter, but he is very easy to connect with on LinkedIn. But please check out some of those partnerships that the NBA are doing, and I was really interested to see one when sports does return, NBA does return, how this partnership develops and how they can use artificial intelligence to analyze the big data and start giving some of that personalized content and personalized broadcast experience. Now, here's the segment. One slide, 2 minutes. This is where I find a slide, mine or someone else's, and present it or represent it for today. Start the clock, James. This slide is actually someone that I respect highly, Mary Meeker. You might have heard me talk about Mary previously. She releases a report on the internet once a year, and this slide is actually around podcasts and the growth in podcast listener numbers. In this case, it says 70 million podcast listeners, and it's gone 2x in 4 years. And number 2 in the chart that she released is Joe Rogan. And just recently, Joe, congratulations, $100 million deal with Spotify. And it really does move the podcast industry along. Spotify has obviously been in an acquisition spree in acquiring The Ringer, Gimlet Media as well. And it's really, I guess, validating podcasts as a platform. It's going to be interesting to see how podcasting comes out of this. I think podcasting numbers overall have been dipping a little bit, less commuting and stuff as everyone's working from home. But they do provide a quite valuable opportunity to connect with listeners. And so advertisers are obviously moving that direction. So I wanted to point that out. As I said, if you're not following Mary Meeker and her yearly reports, you really should. They are always chock full of trends and opportunities on potentially where your next digital implementation should be. My last segment is this Do This Today. It's a segment I've added recently. And it's really one tactic to it. You can implement today that will improve your life, whether it be in work or digital or just life. And one thing from the Sports Biz Zoom calls, I have been reading more because I'm getting a lot of great recommendations. One book I've just recently finished, it's actually a book that I've given as a gift but I hadn't read, is The Resilience Project by Hugh, Cullen, Berg. And again, I hope I'm saying Hugh's name right there. And it's all really around gratitude, empathy, and meditation. And I'm a work in progress on all of those fronts. In trying to both express gratitude and empathy and try to figure out how to do meditation. My mind is always all over the place, so it's always hard to get a little bit of that quietness. I don't know about you, but I find it difficult, but it is something that I'm working on. But if you have either seen Hugh talk or heard his book, he talks about an Indian boy who shows gratefulness and is grateful for many things in his life. And he constantly points them out during the day when he sees them by just going, this This is what I'm grateful for. And so Hugh has this task of pointing out things you're grateful for. And for me, this is you, the podcast listener. And by that, you individually, not as a group, not as an audience, not as a demographic segment, but you as an individual. I'm very, very grateful for you taking your time in your busy day, giving me your attention for 30 or 40 minutes a week, and also support by downloading this, providing reviews, supporting via Patreon. I mean, in some cases, becoming clients. So I'm very, it's the reason I keep doing this podcast. I'm very grateful that people keep downloading it and giving me feedback that it is of value. So those of you who have done that over the years, I do appreciate you. And yeah, again, it's just a thank you from me for you for listening. So if there's any way I can help you, please reach out. Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. You go to the SportsGeek website, find out more information on digital dollars, how we can help you. Make sure we claw back some of that sponsorship money that we need to make sure happens despite COVID. If you're a business looking to reach my audience, I'd love to talk to you about the Sports Geek Amplify project that we're working on. And if you're someone that is currently furloughed or stood down or have lost their job, please reach out. It's been great to see some of my friends and some of the guests offering to provide LinkedIn recommendations and connect. I'll make that same offer. I've got a list there on the website, Sports Business Rockstars. You can add your name to that, put your hand up to say, I want to be part of the next wave. And if you can, I'd love to see you on the Sports Business Zoom calls. Just go to sportsgeekhq.com. All the links will be there, including our Patreon link. If you could be a Patreon, I really would appreciate sportsgeekhq.com/Patreon. That's it from me. Please stay safe, everybody. Stay connected. Wash your hands regularly. All the things that we should be doing. Until next episode, my name is Sean Cullen, and you've been listening to Sports Geek.
Join Sports Geek Nation access to exclusive Slack and Facebook groups with regular Q&A sessions with Sean Callanan. Go to sportsgeeknation.com to join. Got a question for Sean? Send it in for our Sports Geek Q&A series. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/questions. Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.